We do a lot of orchestra film cue type work. And how do we go about creating those mock-ups that eventually will either stay the way that they are or they'll be replaced by a full orchestra? There's actually a suite of tools that we use over and over again that are absolutely probably going to be unexpected by a lot of users. But we're going to first start with what inspired this track to begin with. So we're going to take about 10-15 seconds here and let you listen to the pluck sound that is the inspiration and the starting basis for the composition of the track. So let's have a listen. Skipping ahead a little bit, going right to the end, you'll actually hear that this part, a little motif, which is a six or eight note motif. Let's have a look at it really quickly. Make sure you've got your zoom settings set correctly in Cubase so that you can actually see your note information. And notice that all we did was we added an EC kind of call and answer at the end. So that's basically what started the track and what inspired the whole feel of the track itself. So now let's take a couple of minutes and let's look at some of the other instruments. And we're going to be, like I said, this is going to be very brief. This is not going to be in depth. We're going to go into in depth and do it in a number of other tutorials. So actually what we're going to look at are these 4 parts. And all of these 4 parts are coming out of a very, very old module. Believe it or not, coming out of this Iderol orchestral module that we use a lot for mock-ups. Why do we use it? Because it has a very soft and intimate sound. And in the case of this overall track, that is something we wanted to achieve. So let's take a few seconds here, and we're going to listen to what the orchestral instruments are actually doing here. And it's a very small chamber sound. Now let's have a look at the simple pulse part. You can see that this pulse part is literally what it is. It is a very, very simple 2-note pulse that's happening. Notice the gap in this. We're using woodwind parts and we're not playing chords. We are orchestrating, and when you're orchestrating material, you don't play chords. String chords and other chords are very, very appropriate for rock songs and so on, but when you're doing real orchestration, instruments actually don't play multiple notes at the same time. They actually play single notes, or they play smaller motifs, which then add up to the overall whole, which creates that orchestral sound. So you saw that woodwind pulse track is very, very simple. And if you look at the oboe track, it's very, very simple too. So one thing that we're going to point out also in this oboe track here is that you'll notice that we have gone in and extended the length of notes. Critical notes. Some notes actually stop, some are extended. And the reason for that is a lot of the glissando that happens with an oboe part, if you watch an oboe player play, you watch where their fingers move. When their fingers are closer together, the notes do slur together. When they are farther apart, there has to be gaps in the notes. And the gaps have to be fairly inconsistent. The timing, not inconsistent, but the gaps at the end of these notes. And the gaps are here. You can see that in the case of the C-sharp 4 to B, it's significantly extended, so we can extend the feel of that slur. So you can hear it happen by itself here. You get a pretty good idea of what's going on there. So this is not complete. This is going to be a very, very short tutorial. It's 5 minutes. So let me just add one last part to this. Now you'll notice with this orchestral arrangement overall, you'll notice that the main thing that this particular module lacks is a lot of low end. And that's because in a lot of modern orchestration, when it actually ends up in film, what adds that low end, that depth, that sound are synthetic strings or synth strings. Playing orchestral parts, but they actually add a level of depth at that low end. So let's listen to it with the subtle string part added in. And again, you'll notice here, and this is critical to point out again, that the slurring of the notes is there. The attacks are sometimes inconsistent, but overall, to the entire whole, when listened to together, you can hear how that creates the feel. It's important when you're learning how to do this to understand a lot of musical theory, to make sure that whatever you're playing with actually creates that feel. And there are two parts playing off of one another, or three parts in a call and answer scenario. It's something that Hans Zimmer talks about, a lot of modern composers. That's a lot of what happens in film, is you're having a conversation. And orchestral music always has conversations. It goes back hundreds of years. Music has this kind of thing where it becomes the most human when there is this kind of conversation. So I hope this was really helpful to you. And it's a little bit of a different departure, and a little bit of a peek under the hood. And I promise you we'll do far more in-depth tutorials when we look at some of the more complex orchestral music that we do here and some of the more complex cues that we do. And once again, happy beat making, happy looping.